My dear friend, tonight I need you to lean in like your future depends on it, because this moment is not casual. It is a divine interruption, a holy collision between your weary steps and God's unstoppable purpose. If my voice has reached you right now, it is because heaven pulled you into the room. You were not scrolling. You were summoned. Something in the unseen whispered your name and said, now. Your faith, yes, your trembling, imperfect, stubborn faith unlocked this moment. It cracked open a door in the spirit and allowed light to break into places you thought would stay dark forever. You walked through a season that felt like walking through fire, with no map, no explanation, no promise of relief. But that heat was not punishment, it was the furnace that reveals gold. What you thought was chaos was actually your final examination, the test that separates the version of you that struggled from the version of you that will rise. And hear me clearly, you passed. Not barely, not accidentally. You passed because destiny refused to let you fold. Now heaven is releasing an open door season over your life, doors that won't creak open politely but will fly open with force. And to every supporter, every believer, every watcher, your faithfulness is seen, honored, blessed. Heaven has remembered every sacrifice you ever made. Before we go deeper, I want to pause and thank you for being here. Your presence, your openness, even your quiet listening, it all matters more than you know. If this message is already stirring something in your spirit, let me invite you to drop 777 inches the comments. Not as a ritual, not as pressure, but as a simple signal that these words are finding their home in you. If you feel it, stay with me until the end. Let's begin. Beloved chosen ones, what you're stepping into is not just a message to listen to and walk away from. This right here, right now, is a living spiritual blueprint. It breathes, it expands, it reveals itself one layer at a time, the way dawn slowly pulls the night back and exposes what was always there but hidden from sight. And I tell you this as a man who has walked through fire, who has seen seasons that didn't make sense until God turned the page. Come back to this word, not once, not twice. Come back whenever your spirit feels that pull. Because every time you return, something new will shine through. Every time another layer of revelation will rise from the deep, like treasure breaking the surface. You see, some messages inform you, but this one forms you. Some messages speak to your mind, but this one speaks to your destiny. It is alive because heaven breathed on it, and heaven breathed on it because you have just crossed the threshold you didn't even realize you were walking toward. Yes, you passed the final test. And let me pause right there, because I need you to feel this in your bones. You didn't stumble across victory. You didn't pass because life suddenly got easier. You passed because when everything tightened around you, when your spirit was stretched to what felt like its breaking point, something inside you refused to bow. Your character held. Your faith remained. Your spirit stayed aligned even when the storm rattled everything else. The test wasn't announced. It never is. God doesn't hand you a study guide for seasons like this. Instead, he sends pressure, he allows silence, he lets the ground shake beneath your feet, not to break you, but to reveal what is unbreakable in you. And because you stood, because you endured, because you didn't forfeit your identity, heaven is preparing to show you what comes next. But before God unfolds what's next, you must understand what has already been written, because your life, my friend, is not random. I want you to imagine this long before you ever opened your eyes, long before the world named you, long before you took your first breath. Heaven wrote your assignment into existence, not lightly, not casually, not as an experiment. Your assignment was spoken with intention, with precision, with the authority of the Most High. Your existence is not an afterthought, it is a decree. The story of your life was never written in pencil, it was carved into the eternal blueprint of heaven. That means every scene, every chapter, every heartbreak, every delay, every sudden shift that you couldn't make sense of, they were all part of a divine script. Not to trap you, not to confuse you, but to lead you, to shape you, to prepare you. You are not living out a sequence of coincidences. You are walking through pages that were authored with purpose. And I need you to let that truth settle into the places where doubt once lived. You were not wandering all these years. You were being led. You were not lost. You were being aligned. You were not overlooked. You were being positioned. Some of you have asked God, why do I feel so different? Why don't I fit in anywhere? Why do I always feel slightly out of place? Let me give you the answer. Chosen ones don't blend, they stand out. You were crafted with a spiritual frequency that cannot be muted. There is a pull on your life that has existed since childhood. Maybe you didn't have the language for it, but you felt it, a quiet tug in your soul, a sense that something was guiding you, even when you didn't know the direction. That tug wasn't confusion, it was calling. And calling doesn't ask for permission. Calling doesn't wait until you're ready. Calling doesn't apologize for disrupting your plans. Calling grabs you by the spirit, whispers your name in the dark, pushes you forward even when you think you're standing still. You didn't choose destiny, destiny chose you. That is why you could never truly fit in. When everyone else was comfortable, shrinking, something in you resisted. When others could settle for less, something in you felt uneasy. When you tried to mimic the world around you, your spirit wouldn't stay quiet. That was heaven's hand on your shoulder, steering you away from places that could not hold your purpose. What looked like rejection was actually redirection. What felt like isolation was preservation. What seemed like missed opportunity was protection. You were never meant to blend in the crowd. You were meant to carry a light that exposes, reveals, and transforms. And when you carry that kind of light, darkness recognizes you before people do. That's why some treated you differently. Not because something was wrong with you, because something was destined in you. Listen to me now, you were summoned. Not invited, not suggested, summoned by the God who appointed your steps before you could walk them. The force you felt pulling you through life wasn't confusion, it was orchestration. Heaven was aligning your path with precision, removing who needed to leave and placing who needed to stay. Even your detours were design. Even your delays were divine. You see, chosen ones often misinterpret their journey because they measure it by comfort instead of calling. But calling will disrupt you long before it elevates you. Calling will strip you long before it crowns you. Calling will isolate you long before it opens doors for you. And because you were chosen, you lived this truth without even realizing it. Your childhood sensitivities, they weren't weaknesses, they were spiritual antennas. Your early wisdom, not coincidence, evidence of a soul marked by divine purpose. Your inability to stay where others could settle, confirmation that God's hand was setting you apart for something greater than normality. You have never been common. You have never been average. You have never been accidental. Every step, every tear, every triumph, every failure, woven intentionally into a story heaven authored long before your arrival on earth. And now that you've passed the final test, now that your character has proven stronger than your circumstances, now that your spirit has risen above every attempt to pull you backward, heaven is ready to reveal the next chapter written for you all along. Stay with me, because what God releases next is not small, not subtle, not delayed. What comes next is alignment, acceleration, and divine unfolding. But before we get there, recognize this truth. You are not here by chance. You are here by calling. And a major part of that calling is understanding that the light within you has never been something the world could dim, no matter how many situations tried to bury it. Throughout your life, there were moments when you attempted to shrink so you would not stand out. Times when you tried to silence your voice, soften your presence, or minimize the fire inside you just to make others comfortable. You tried to blend into environments that were too small for you, hoping that fitting in would make things easier, hoping that quieting yourself would protect you from misunderstanding or criticism. Yet every time you tried to fold inward, every time you tried to step back into the shadows, something internal resisted. That resistance was not pride or stubbornness. It was your soul refusing to be lowered to a realm beneath your assignment. The calling inside you pushed against every attempt to dim your brilliance because you were never designed to disappear into the background. Even when you intentionally stepped aside, even when you tried to mute yourself, your presence still carried a weight, a glow, a spiritual resonance that others could feel before they had words for it. Darkness recognized you before people knew how to interpret you. You have always belonged to a higher realm, and your spirit has always known it. This is why you felt out of place in rooms others found familiar, why you experienced a deep sense of not belonging, even when people tried to include you, why you sensed an internal pull away from environments where others were comfortable settling. When you felt like the odd one out when others told you that you were too sensitive, too intuitive, too aware, too mature, too serious, what they were really reacting to was the depth and the light inside you. But that sensitivity you carried so naturally was not a flaw. It was a sign of selection. It was evidence that heaven marked you long before you ever understood what being chosen meant. Your sensitivity was a spiritual antenna tuning you into frequencies other people never heard. You were not just feeling emotions, you were reading atmospheres. You were not just reacting to people, you were discerning intentions. You were not simply cautious, you were spiritually alert. From a young age, you noticed things others overlooked. You felt danger approaching before a single sign appeared in the natural. You recognized emotional shifts in conversations before anyone said a word. You saw through falsehoods and illusions with clarity you could not explain. You carried wisdom beyond your years, not because you studied harder than others, but because heaven equipped you with insight for the purpose you were born into. You were being shaped to carry something your family line had never carried before. You were given vision to see what generations before you could not see. You were given discernment so your spirit could walk ahead of your natural steps. You were being prepared to break cycles that had repeated for decades, to dismantle patterns that nobody else managed to escape, to step into a destiny that demanded more awareness than the average person possesses. Because of the light within you, God aligned your steps with divine timing, even in moments when you felt lost or confused. Looking back, you can recognize the invisible protection that surrounded your journey, the way certain doors closed before you entered rooms that would have damaged your spirit, the way relationships ended just before they could drain your purpose, the way opportunities dissolved before they could pull you off the path heaven designed. These were not coincidences, but orchestrations. You managed to avoid situations that would have shattered you, not because you were lucky, but because divine protection was active long before you understood you were being guarded. Your steps were guided even when you felt directionless. Something greater than you was ordering your footsteps, keeping you from places that were not aligned with your assignment. Heaven was not only protecting your safety, heaven was protecting your timing. There were things you wanted but were not ready for, doors you prayed for but could not yet carry, opportunities that would have crushed you with their weight had they arrived too early. God delayed certain moments not to punish you but to prepare you. When you cried over what you lost, heaven saw what you were being saved from. When you questioned why someone walked away, heaven saw the spiritual impact they would have had if they stayed. When you mourned a closed door, heaven saw a future version of you that needed room to grow. Everything removed from your life did not fall apart by accident. It was dismantled deliberately. Heaven extracted you from relationships that would have corrupted your identity. Heaven separated you from environments that could not hold your growth. Heaven took opportunities out of your reach because they belonged to an earlier version of yourself. You misinterpreted endings as rejection, but they were actually divine redirections. You mistook emptiness for abandonment, but it was preparation. You thought things were slipping away because you were not enough, but they slipped away because your calling was too important to be entangled. Your life has been shaped with unusual pressure because you are carrying more than your own story. You hold a generational assignment, one that extends beyond your personal victories and personal healing. You are living for ancestors who prayed but never saw the answer, for family members who fought battles they could not win, for futures that depend on your breakthrough. You are the interruption to generational cycles, the breaker of inherited patterns, the first of your lineage to rise in a new way. The weight you felt was not punishment, it was legacy resting on your shoulders. Because your assignment is heavy, your preparation was intense. Your awareness had to be heightened. Your intuition had to be sharpened. Your journey had to be more challenging than those around you. Your separations had to be deeper. Your losses had to be specific. God was not being unfair. He was being deliberate. Every experience in your life served as training for the purpose you are about to walk into. Every disappointment reshaped your perspective. Every heartbreak clarified your identity. Every delay strengthened your endurance. Every closed door redirected your path. Every loss purified your motives. Every shift brought you closer to the person heaven intended you to become. And now that your spirit has endured, now that your character has been refined, now that you have survived everything meant to silence your light, God is preparing to reveal the reason for every storm. The intensity you lived through was preparation for what you are about to carry. The isolation you endured was shaping you for leadership. The stretching you felt was making room for destiny. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was random. Nothing was accidental. The light inside you was always meant to rise, and even when you tried to hide, your spirit could not be dimmed. Heaven guarded your life because heaven plans to shine through it. My dear friends, there comes a point in every chosen person's journey when the calling that once whispered suddenly begins to roar. It rises from deep within like something ancient waking up inside your bones, refusing to let you sleep through your purpose any longer. That is the season you have stepped into now. The calling on your life is no longer something you can brush aside, ignore, or silence with busyness. It keeps tugging at you in moments of stillness, nudging you when you try to settle for less, echoing through the quiet corners of your mind. You feel it because it has intensified and heaven has decided it is time. You cannot walk away from it now because it will not let you. The call is rising louder and stronger, demanding that you step into a higher version of yourself. It is pulling you out of who you used to be and urging you to grow into the person God always saw when He looked at you. And even if you tried to resist the transformation, even if you wanted things to stay familiar, something in your spirit is pushing forward like a river breaking past the dam. This rising call is not asking you politely, it is compelling you from the inside out. You can feel it urging you to shed old habits, old identities, old fears, old patterns. It is pressing you to release the version of yourself that lived in survival mode, because your purpose requires a self that knows how to stand tall, walk with clarity, and carry spiritual authority. You feel the shift not because life has become easy, but because something in your soul knows the time has come. When purpose wakes up, passivity dies. When calling rises, comfort loses its power. And when God decides to elevate you, He will not let you remain untouched by the process. This is why the season you just came through felt so chaotic, confusing, and heavy. But hear me clearly, it was not chaos, not even close. What looked like disorder was actually a carefully crafted examination. What felt like emotional turbulence was a deeper spiritual evaluation. What appeared to be a storm was actually strategy. The season that almost broke you was not punishment, it was preparation. Heaven was not angry with you, heaven was qualifying you. You were not being pushed down, you were being refined. Nothing about what you went through was random. Every pressure, every delay, every lonely night, every unanswered question was part of a divine structure designed specifically for your growth. If God had told you that you were in a test, you would have studied for it mentally instead of living through it spiritually. You would have tried to perform rather than transform. So He allowed the test to come disguised. He let it arrive in a form that would reveal your character rather than your memorization. The test hid itself behind the pressures that weighed on you. It showed up in the form of delays that made you question whether God was still with you. It wrapped itself in loneliness so deep you wondered if anyone understood what you were carrying. It hid inside moments of confusion where you could not find answers no matter how hard you prayed. And though all of it felt overwhelming, it was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to reveal what was already inside you. Because God does not test your knowledge, He tests your nature. He does not test how much scripture you can recite. He tests whether those scriptures have taken root in your heart. He does not test your mind, He tests your spirit. He tests your posture when no one is watching, your integrity when your emotions are stirred, your humility when pride tries to rise, your patience when everything feels stuck, your faith when his voice seemed silent. This is why the season was so intense. God was not testing what you knew, he was testing who you had become. Think back for a moment. Remember the nights when pressure pressed on every side and you had nothing left but faith. Remember the delays that made you confront your desire to control. Remember the loneliness that stripped away everything familiar until only your true identity remained. Every part of that experience was wrapped in divine purpose. Pressure revealed whether you would hold on to God's promises or surrender to fear. Delay exposed whether you trusted God's timing or demanded your own. Loneliness forced you to face the parts of yourself that could not enter the next chapter. Confusion trained you to lean not on your understanding, but on God's whisper. And through all of it, God was watching your posture. He was looking not for perfection, but for alignment. He wanted to see whether you would hold your heart steady when discouragement came. He wanted to know if you would keep your spirit clean when offense tried to invade. He wanted to see whether you would maintain integrity when shortcuts whispered temptations. He wanted to watch if you would still choose faith when everything in your life felt uncertain. These were not tests of skill or intelligence. They were tests of character, tests of spirit, tests of identity. The pressure was not God's anger, it was his craftsmanship. The delays were not his silence, they were his precision. The loneliness was not abandonment, it was separation for elevation. The confusion was not punishment, it was detox from old patterns. The entire season was designed to stretch the parts of you that had never been stretched before, because the next season requires a version of you that cannot bend under pressure. The rising call you feel now is the result of everything you endured. It is not a new call. It is the same call that was placed over you since birth. It is simply louder now because heaven saw how you walked through the test. You have shown that you can be trusted with more. You have shown that you will not fold when things become difficult. You have shown that faith, not fear, leads your decisions. And because of this, the calling that once whispered is now standing tall, commanding your attention, urging you to rise into purpose, with boldness you did not possess before the test. You can no longer ignore the call because the season of hiding has ended. You can no longer settle for comfort because the season of stretching has begun. You can no longer shrink back because the season of transformation is pressing itself forward. What used to feel optional now feels urgent. What once felt distant now feels close. What once felt like a dream now feels like a mandate. The calling is rising because you are ready for it in a way you were not ready before. Everything in your journey has been guiding you to this moment where purpose and preparation finally meet. And now that the test has completed its work in you, you will begin to understand why nothing in your past season made sense until now. The confusion was awakening, the pressure was refining, the silence was aligning, the hardship was instructing, and the calling that once felt faint now feels like a force that is reshaping your future. You cannot ignore it anymore because it refuses to let you live beneath your assignment. You are being pushed into transformation because destiny will no longer wait for you to feel ready. It is time. And part of that time is recognizing that God did not test you with a written exam or a checklist. Instead, he tested you through people and circumstances, through interactions you never anticipated, and through moments that struck you precisely where you were most vulnerable. The testing ground was not a classroom or a controlled environment. It was your daily life, the places you showed up without preparation. Every confrontation, every disappointment, every temptation, and every unexpected shift in the atmosphere became a question, quietly asking, will you stay who you were, or will you rise into who you are becoming? Some of the greatest tests came through people who were sent knowingly or unknowingly to provoke reactions you had already outgrown. They pushed your buttons intentionally or unintentionally, tugging at wounds you believed had healed and pulling at insecurities you buried long ago. These individuals crossed your path not by accident but by divine allowance, becoming unexpected instruments in the refining process. Their attitude, their disrespect, their inconsistency, and their immaturity were all used to expose what was still fragile within you and what still needed strengthening. God allowed them not to defeat you, but to reveal just how much you had already grown. You were tested in your patience when someone tried to ignite anger in you, and you were tested in your stability when someone attempted to destabilize your peace. These provocations were never meant to humiliate you. They were mirrors reflecting how far you have journeyed from the person you used to be. When you wanted to fight back, lash out, or defend your dignity through old patterns, something deeper inside you whispered to stay still, to choose differently, to rise above the moment. And that shift, quiet but powerful, was undeniable evidence of transformation taking root in your life. Just as challenging were the opportunities that appeared golden on the surface, yet carried consequences that would have compromised your soul if you had stepped through them. Many doors opened before you in this past season, but not every one of them was aligned with your destiny or in harmony with the path God was shaping for you. Some of them shimmered with potential, seemed beneficial, and appealed directly to your desires, offering what looked like progress or advantage. Yet beneath their shine, they carried a cost that the Holy Spirit would not allow you to ignore, a subtle warning that something was off. These were the opportunities that looked right but were wrong. Invitations that tested whether you had truly developed the discernment to separate what is God-sent from what is merely appealing to the senses. You were tempted by shortcuts that would have advanced you quickly on the outside but derailed your purpose slowly on the inside. You stood in moments where your flesh said yes, yet your spirit firmly whispered no. And though the refusal was difficult, though walking away felt like missing out, heaven recorded it as obedience. That choice revealed that your priorities had shifted from convenience to calling, from immediate gratification to long-term purpose. Temptations also rose from within, urging you to revisit patterns you had once vowed to leave behind, pulling at old emotions and attempting to reopen doors you had already closed. They appeared wrapped in familiar comforts, sweet memories, or sudden impulses that felt harmless in the moment, yet beneath that surface, they carried the power to weaken your spiritual foundation if you were not watchful. These temptations were not random. They were tied to your history, tailored to your past weaknesses, strategically placed to test whether your healing was genuine or only temporary. They asked the question silently but powerfully. Will you respond from trauma or from transformation? Would you fall back into old reactions, old coping mechanisms, and old identities that once defined you? Or would you stand firm as the person God had been shaping through every trial you endured? Each of these moments became a doorway, either pulling you into your future or trying to drag you back into your past. And your responses time after time revealed that you have become stronger, wiser, steadier, and far more anchored in your faith than ever before. The testing examined your self-control with greater precision than any other season in your life, pressing into areas you once avoided and revealing who you were becoming beneath the surface. When someone wounded you, the real question was whether you would retaliate or release, whether you would allow pain to pull you backward or let grace move you forward. When frustration surged and emotions rose sharply, did you speak recklessly or choose restraint, even when restraint felt unnatural? When anxiety whispered lies and tried to shake your foundation, did you collapse into fear or cling to the place? In truth, you had learned through previous battles. These were not surface-level questions. They reached deep into your character and tested the habits, patterns, and principles shaping your inner life. Every situation you endured was crafted to reveal the maturity forming inside you. God was not checking whether you would get everything right. He was watching whether you would stay aligned when everything felt wrong. He was measuring the strength of your spirit, the depth of your integrity, the consistency of your faith, and the calmness of your heart under pressure. And each time you chose peace when conflict was easier, each time you chose silence when your ego demanded revenge, each time you chose wisdom over impulse, you passed a test. Many fail repeatedly. You succeeded in this season not because you were perfect, but because you refused to become the old version of yourself, even when the pressure to slip back into familiar patterns felt overwhelming. There were countless moments when you had every reason to return to who you used to be, to pick up old weapons, old responses, and old defenses that once felt natural and safe. But you chose differently, deliberately, consistently. You chose to grow, to rise, to protect the work God was doing within you. You chose to act from healing rather than hurt, from wisdom rather than impulse, from clarity rather than reaction. That is why heaven took notice and marked this season as significant. You did not let your past dictate your present or your future. You broke cycles that once controlled you and stepped out of reactions that once defined you. You honored the new identity God was forming inside you by refusing to regress into the one He delivered you from. And in the stillness of these difficult decisions, you chose silence over shouting, faith over fear, and calm over chaos, allowing your spirit to settle into a deeper trust. You learned that not every battle deserves your energy, not every insult deserves a response, and not every storm requires a reaction or explanation. You learned to let God fight on your behalf while you stood grounded in His strength. Silence became your strength, peace became your protection, and faith became your anchor in moments that once would have shaken you. These were not small decisions, but powerful shifts, showing heaven you were no longer living from insecurity, but from identity. And because of these choices, heaven looked beyond your actions and examined your intentions, searching the deeper places within you where truth resides. God was not seeking flawless behavior. He was seeking a sincere heart that desired to honor Him even in weakness. He was not watching to see whether you walked perfectly. He was watching to see whether you walked honestly with integrity, guiding each step. He looked at your motives, your posture, your efforts, your willingness to surrender, even when surrender felt unfair or heavy. And what He saw was not perfection but purity, not performance but authenticity, not spotless execution but earnest obedience. Heaven recognized that your heart had matured enough to carry the blessing, the responsibility, and the elevation that are coming next. Everything about this season has proven that you are no longer who you once were, because every challenge you faced kept revealing layers of growth you did not always see in yourself. The tests through people, the trials that rose from circumstances, the battles against temptation, the opportunities that stretched and pressed your discernment, and the provocations that tried to drag you back into old patterns all worked together to show you a truth that quietly unfolded within your spirit. You have changed, you have grown, you have risen, and heaven has witnessed every step of that transformation. Beloved chosen ones, when you look back at the road behind you, you will begin to understand something profound about the way God prepares His chosen ones. The greatest elevation always demands the greatest examination, and the final test in your life will never be the easiest one. It comes with weight, it comes with force, it comes pressing against every weak point you did not know you still carried. That is why the season you just walked through felt like the walls were closing in from every direction. Pressure rose like a tide. Strain tightened around your spirit. Your thoughts, your emotions, your relationships, your time, your strength, all felt stretched to the breaking point. But hear this clearly, the pressure was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to refine you. It was meant to strip away what could not enter the next dimension of your calling. God knew that the version of you who began the journey could not be the same version of you who completes it. So He allowed pressure to become the fire that burns away everything unnecessary, everything fragile, everything immature. Pressure is the great purifier of destiny. It exposes what is weak, strengthens what is strong, and reveals what is true. When God applies pressure, He is not pushing you down, He is pressing things out. He is forcing out the doubt you kept hidden beneath confidence. He is forcing out the fear that showed up in your silence. He is forcing out the insecurities that tried to masquerade as humility. He is forcing out habits of self-sabotage you developed in seasons of pain. He is forcing out the emotional clutter that kept you from hearing His voice clearly. Pressure reveals motives. Pressure reveals identity. Pressure reveals posture. And yes, pressure reveals the places in your soul where healing still needs to happen. But even as you faced pressure from every side, even as the weight increased, heaven was not judging you. Heaven was preparing you. Every delay you experienced, Every moment where you felt stuck or suspended, every prayer that seemed to bounce back in silence was not denial. The delay was alignment. God was not withholding blessings from you. He was waiting for you to grow into the version of yourself capable of stewarding them. He was watching your heart, watching your discipline, watching your willingness to surrender old ways. There is a version of you that belongs to an earlier chapter of your life, and God cannot send elevation to an outdated identity. So He waited, not to punish you, but to perfect you. He was synchronizing your spirit with your assignment, molding you into someone who would not crumble when the blessing arrived. This is why the loneliness you walked through was never abandonment. It was preparation. Some lessons can only be learned in silence. Some clarity can only be received when everything familiar falls away. Some growth can only take place when you are pulled away from the noise of other people's expectations. Loneliness is not a punishment for chosen ones. It is a classroom. God removes distractions so He can speak without interference. He separates you from the voices around you so you can finally discern the voice within. In the quiet, you learn who you are without validation and who God is without contradiction. Loneliness becomes a sculptor, shaping your character with intentional strokes, carving away everything false and revealing everything authentic. During those long nights of questioning, during those moments when the silence felt sharp enough to cut you, God was teaching you how to hear Him with new depth. When He turns down the volume of the world, it is because He is turning up the volume of heaven. Pain becomes a doorway. Stillness becomes a teacher. Isolation becomes illumination. You begin to see yourself more clearly, not filtered through the expectations of others, but through the truth God reveals when everything else fades away. It is in solitude that God confronts the version of you that has been shaped by trauma. It is in solitude that He uncovers the wounds you tried to bury under busyness. It is in solitude that He brings to the surface the beliefs you formed in childhood that have limited your growth in adulthood. God does not expose these things to shame you. He exposes them to release you. Healing requires revelation, and revelation requires quiet. As the silence deepened, as the separation continued, you discovered that part of your growth required letting go of the false self you created to survive old pain. You began to recognize the ways trauma had shaped your decisions. You saw how fear had influenced your expectations. You noticed how loyalty to the wrong people had drained your strength. You discovered beliefs that had been inherited rather than chosen. The pressure pulled these things up from the depths of your soul because they could not walk with you into your future. Elevation requires excavation. Before God can build the next version of you, He must tear down the version built by pain. This is why you felt stripped, vulnerable, exposed. God was removing the layers that no longer served your purpose. Some relationships ended suddenly, not because you failed, but because your spirit outgrew the connection. Some opportunities vanished not because you were unqualified, but because they were too small for your future. Some people distanced themselves not because you did something wrong, but because your growth made their stagnation uncomfortable. These losses were not losses at all. They were strategic separations. They were God's way of removing what would have contaminated your calling or slowed your momentum. You were being prepared for. Higher and higher requires fewer attachments. Not everyone who walked with you this far was meant to walk with you into the next season. Some people were part of your history, but not part of your destiny. The truth is, spiritual maturity demands separation. You cannot grow deeply if you stay connected to what drains you. You cannot hear God clearly if you keep turning toward voices that confuse you. You cannot step into purpose if you remain tied to people who benefit from your brokenness. There comes a time when God must prune your life, cutting away every relationship, every mindset, every habit, every identity rooted in old wounds. He must create space for what He intends to place in your hands. And pruning, though painful, is proof of potential. God only cuts what He plans to grow. This season asks something from you that earlier seasons did not. It asked for wisdom to discern what deserved access to your heart. It asked for discipline to maintain boundaries you never knew you needed. It asked for clarity to see what was truly aligned with God and what was merely familiar. It asked for strength to walk alone when support systems fell away. It asked for courage to release what felt safe but was spiritually toxic. And slowly, through pressure and silence, through pruning and separation, you began to grow into someone with deeper discernment, stronger resilience, sharper intuition, and more grounded faith. You may not have recognized it while you were in the middle of it, but heaven saw every moment of transformation. God watched you choose healing when bitterness called your name. He watched you choose forgiveness when revenge would have felt easier. He watched you choose patience when fear tried to rush you. He watched you choose faith when uncertainty tried to paralyze you. The pressure purified your motives. The silence sharpened your perception. The isolation strengthened your foundation. And the pruning expanded your capacity. And as heaven watched all of this unfold, something remarkable began taking shape inside you. You were no longer reacting from the old wounds that once held you hostage. You were beginning to operate from a place of spiritual stability, strength, and clarity that you did not possess before the pressure came. The season that once felt like it was breaking you was actually building you. What looked like isolation was creating inner resilience. What felt like stripping was actually revealing the version of you capable of carrying your next assignment. God was not interested in polishing the surface of your life. He was reshaping the core of who you are. And that reshaping required that every false layer be removed, every old attachment be severed, every fragile foundation be replaced with something eternal, something stable, something unshakable. This is why the journey felt heavy, why the nights felt long, why your strength was stretched beyond what you believed you had. You were undergoing spiritual reconstruction. The loneliness, the pressure, the pruning were not incidental experiences. They were the training ground for the elevation God was preparing. Every destiny worth carrying demands a threshold you must cross alone. There is a solitude reserved for people who are evolving spiritually. In that solitude, you learn what your heart clings to when everything else has been stripped away. You discover which voices you depend on. You confront the shadowed corners of your own identity. And in that confrontation, God reveals the beliefs, wounds, and fears that have followed you since childhood. He exposes them not to overwhelm you, but to liberate you. Because He knows you cannot build a future on the cracks created by old wounds. He must heal those cracks, and healing often happens in silence. So He quiets the world around you until you have no choice but to listen. He removes the people who buffered you from discomfort so He can speak directly to your soul. He creates space where distractions once lived. And as you sit in that space, clarity comes, insight comes, self-awareness comes. You begin to recognize the parts of yourself that need release. You see how your identity became entangled with the expectations of others. You discover how your worth was shaped by experiences that hurt you, and you begin slowly, reluctantly, yet necessarily to let go. You let go of the version of yourself that learned to survive instead of thrive. You let go of the beliefs that told you you were not enough. You let go of the defenses you built to protect yourself from rejection. You let go of the false identities created by trauma. These identities helped you navigate old seasons, but they cannot accompany you into your new one. They are too small, too fragile, too tied to pain, too rooted in fear. God is not only removing what was around you, He is removing what was inside you that could not bear the weight of your future. And as each layer falls away, something new rises. Confidence grows where insecurity once lived. Peace settles where fear tried to rule. Wisdom deepens where confusion once dominated. Discernment sharpens where naivety used to cloud your judgment. But with every new layer revealed, you also felt the cost of this spiritual refinement. People you loved drifted away. Relationships dissolved, despite your effort to hold them together. Conversations that once felt nourishing suddenly felt draining. You began to see the misalignment you once ignored. And as God lifted you higher, He exposed the spiritual weight of those who walked beside you. Some people were connected to your history, but not your destiny. They were comfortable with the older version of you, but threatened by the evolving one. They recognized your wounds, but not your wisdom. They supported your brokenness, but not your growth. As you changed, the dynamic changed. And no matter how tightly you tried to hold on, God gently and sometimes abruptly pulled them away. This was not to punish you nor to harm them. It was to protect the calling on your life. Some relationships became spiritually exhausting because the season had expired. Some connections stunted your growth because they were rooted in pain, not purpose. Some individuals were tied to your trauma, not your transformation. And as God elevated your identity, those attachments had to be severed. Not everyone is equipped to walk with you into healing. Not everyone can steward the weight of your calling. And certainly not everyone can rise to the spiritual altitude God is calling you to. The higher you go, the fewer people can breathe the air with you. So God thins your circle as He thickens your faith. He reduces your support as He expands your capacity. He limits your dependencies so He can enlarge your reliance on Him. And though this process is painful, though it feels like loss, though it feels like grief, it is actually the gateway to spiritual maturity. Because maturity is not measured by how many people surround you. It is measured by how deeply you can hear God when no one is around. It is measured by your ability to discern when a door is closing. It is measured by your courage to walk away from what is familiar but spiritually draining. It is measured by your willingness to honor your calling even when it asks you to outgrow people who once shaped parts of your life. This is why the season demanded wisdom. It demanded discipline. It demanded discernment. You could not navigate this chapter with the instincts of your past. You needed sharper eyes, steadier hands, clearer judgment. God was shaping you into someone who could see beyond the emotional surface of situations. He was teaching you how to recognize spiritual misalignment even when everything looked fine outwardly. He was tuning your spirit to recognize when a door was from Him and when it was a distraction wrapped in opportunity. He was instructing your heart to remain steady even when the ground beneath you felt uncertain. This level of maturity did not come cheaply. It required long nights, deep questioning, painful honesty, surrendered pride, and the willingness to confront your own patterns. But as you endured, something irreversible happened. You began to choose differently. You started responding with wisdom instead of impulse. You embraced boundaries instead of carrying every burden. You valued peace over attention. You recognized your worth instead of negotiating it. And these shifts were not just signs of growth, they were signs that you were becoming the person God always intended you to be. Pressure purifies. Loneliness trains. Pruning strengthens. Silence instructs. And when these four forces converge in the life of someone chosen, it is because heaven is preparing them for a season of responsibility, impact, and elevation that requires depth, clarity, and inner strength. You are stepping into that season now. And the version of you emerging from this refining process is not fragile, not confused, not scattered, and not unfinished. You are entering a chapter where your discernment will guide you, your wisdom will protect you, your discipline will sustain you, and your spiritual maturity will anchor you. Everything about this season has been shaping you into someone prepared to steward a greater assignment. And while you may not fully see it yet, while you may still be healing from the cuts, pruning left behind, while you may still feel the weight of separation, heaven has already recorded your growth. God has watched every moment you chose resilience over collapse. He watched every time you chose faith over fear. He saw the nights you pressed forward when giving up felt easier. He witnessed the sacrifices, the tears, the surrender, and He will honor them. O chosen ones, when you endure a season of pressure, pruning, silence, and stripping the world around you, rarely realizes the magnitude of what is taking place. But heaven does. Heaven watches every decision, every surrender, every shift in your heart, every moment you choose purpose over impulse. And there comes a moment, a quiet yet thunderous moment in the realm of the Spirit when something breaks open. A divine announcement is released. A heavenly decree is spoken over your life. And though you may not hear it with your natural ears, your spirit recognizes it instantly. That is the moment when your entire atmosphere changes, when something irreversible has shifted. A great event has occurred in the spiritual realm and heaven has declared over your life. Approval granted, release authorized, promotion unlocked. These words are not poetic expressions. They are spiritual transactions. They signify that heaven has examined your process, witnessed your endurance, and judged you ready for the next dimension. It means the test you did not know you were taking has been passed with faith, integrity, and steadfastness. It means what was once withheld is now released. What was once restrained is now unblocked. What was once delayed is now accelerated. Heaven has reached a verdict about you, and the verdict is elevation. And though nothing around you may seem different at first glance, the spiritual realm has already shifted in your favor. You have stepped into a new level long before your circumstances catch up to the change. Your physical world may look unchanged for a moment, but spiritually everything has already been rearranged. Spiritual shifts always precede natural manifestation. Just as seeds sprout beneath the soil before breaking through the surface, your breakthrough began rising the moment heaven spoke on your behalf. And though nobody else may notice what has happened inside you, your soul does. Something feels lighter. Something feels clearer. Something feels different even if you cannot put language to it. The environment of your inner world has changed, and that change is the evidence of the shift. For some, the first sign of this spiritual promotion is an unexplainable peace. Not peace because life got easier, not peace because the battle ended, but peace because something inside you knows the outcome has already been decided in your favor. It is the kind of peace that settles into your bones, the kind that calms the storms inside you, even if storms continue around you. It is a peace that whispers, "You made it. You survived what was sent to break you. You crossed the threshold. It is not over, it has begun." Peace becomes the seal heaven places on those who have stepped into a new season. Alongside that peace, clarity emerges. The fog that clouded your thoughts begins to lift. The confusion that once exhausted you no longer holds power. Questions that tormented you stop screaming. You may not know every detail of what comes next, but you know who is leading you. You know that what once chained you has been shattered. You know that the fears you carried have lost their grip. You know that the lies you believed no longer anchor themselves in your identity. Something in you rises with the understanding that the old you cannot return because the old you no longer exists. Chains have been broken in places you could not reach on your own. This clarity arrives as another sign that the shift is real. You begin to notice the old doubts losing their voice, the old anxieties dissolving. Concerns that once kept you awake no longer feel threatening. Worries that once shook you now bounce off your spirit like raindrops hitting stone. The weight you carried for years suddenly feels lighter, not because the situation changed, but because your spirit did. God has strengthened you in ways that became visible only after the battle passed. You realize you are no longer reacting from scarcity, fear, or insecurity, but from a place of spiritual grounding you did not possess before. And then expectation appears. Not the anxiety-driven expectation of waiting for the next blow, but the hopeful, quiet, powerful expectation that something good is coming. You find yourself waking up with a sense of anticipation, as though your soul knows that the next chapter is unfolding even before your eyes can see it. It is the same feeling a seed has when it knows it is about to break through the soil. It is the feeling of destiny stirring. Your spirit recognizes that heaven has already turned the page, and now creation itself is catching up. Expectation becomes a signal that your inner world is aligning with your divine calling. This sense of expectation is proof that your soul has acknowledged what your eyes cannot yet see. You understand intuitively that you have crossed a spiritual boundary, a line you cannot return from. The limits that once held you no longer apply. The ceilings that once blocked you are now broken. The walls that once confined you have been torn down. You have been elevated internally before being elevated externally. And this is how heaven works. First, the rise within, then the rise without. Your inner world moves first. Your outer world follows. When you cross into this new spiritual dimension, the resistance that used to chase you begins to lose its strength. The warfare that once surrounded you becomes quiet. The attacks that once shook you no longer land the same way. It is not that the enemy disappears, it is that he loses access. He cannot reach the altitude God has lifted you into. Darkness can only operate on the ground level. But you are no longer walking there. You have ascended into a realm where the tactics that once defeated you can no longer touch you. The enemy did not stop attacking because he lost interest. He stopped because he lost permission. Heaven revoked his access. This is another sign that the shift has taken place. The weapons may be formed, but they cannot prosper. The shadows may appear, but they cannot infiltrate. The whispers may rise, but they cannot influence. You begin to notice that what once intimidated you now looks small. What once drained you now slides off. What once terrified you now holds no power. This is not delusion, it is elevation. You have grown spiritually beyond the reach of what used to hinder you. And because the spiritual resistance has been neutralized, doors that were closed suddenly open. Not gradually, not reluctantly, but decisively. God begins to move in ways that do not require your effort, your strategy, or your striving. Opportunities find you. Favor flows toward you. Breakthroughs align themselves with your path. What was once a struggle now becomes a flow. Not because life became easy, but because heaven authorized the shift. When God says yes, nothing created has the authority to say no. When God unlocks a door, no force has the power to close it. When God initiates a spiritual shift, the doors that open are not the kind you must convince, persuade, or force your way through. They open because heaven has stamped your name on them. They open because the season has ripened. They open because the spiritual locks have been removed. And while others may wonder how your breakthroughs arrive so quickly, you will know the truth. Nothing in your elevation was sudden. It was simply the unveiling of what had already shifted in the unseen realm. Timing catches up to obedience. Opportunity catches up to preparation. Manifestation catches up to spiritual authority. The moment heaven authorized your promotion, the natural world began rearranging itself to accommodate what God spoke over you. But before those doors swing wide, something profound happens inside you. You begin to feel a sense of spiritual height, as if you are standing on ground you have never touched before. You sense strength in areas where you once felt fragile. You feel clarity where confusion once suffocated you. This internal elevation is not imagined. It is the evidence that your spirit is no longer operating at the level where the past battles were fought. You have risen. You have matured. You have been repositioned internally so you can walk boldly into what God is unfolding externally. And with this inner ascension comes a new awareness, a heightened sensitivity to the movements of God, and a deeper understanding of your place in His plan. You begin to notice that the boundaries that once defined your life no longer limit you. You sense that you have outgrown old emotional patterns, old fears, old insecurities. You feel yourself stepping beyond the version of you that was shaped by struggle. You feel freedom, loosening knots you carried for years. This is the breaking of spiritual restraints. It is the moment you realize you no longer walk carrying the weight of every past failure or disappointment. It is the moment you see that chains have quietly fallen off your hands, off your thoughts, off your expectations. These invisible shifts are not subtle. They are the result of heaven declaring that the old season has expired. And while this freedom often arrives quietly, it produces undeniable change in your inner posture. You stop anticipating disaster because you begin expecting destiny. You stop preparing for disappointment because you start preparing for opportunity. Where you once walked with hesitation, you now walk with hope. Where you once questioned everything, you now trust the alignment of God. Hope is not an emotion in this season. It is a sign, a signal, evidence that the spirit within you recognizes a new chapter has begun. Your soul knows before your circumstances do. That is why you feel a pull forward, a stirring in your spirit, a sense that you cannot return to anything that once held you. This expectation is spiritual confirmation. It means your inner world has accepted what heaven already decided. It means the old fear-based lens you used to see life through has been replaced by a vision shaped by faith. It means you are no longer bracing for impact. You are preparing for increase. As this spiritual shift deepens, you begin to sense that the resistance that once surrounded your life has weakened. The spiritual pressure that used to press on your mind, your peace, your emotions now feels distant. It is not that life suddenly became perfect. It is that you have moved beyond the level where those old attacks once reached you. You are no longer standing where the blows previously landed. You have transcended that realm spiritually, and because of that, the weapons that once hit you now fall short. The enemy has not changed tactics, you have changed elevation. And because you are operating at a higher dimension of spiritual authority, the attacks that once intimidated you now feel powerless. This is what it means for the opposition to be neutralized. You do not escape life's challenges, you rise above them. You do not become untouchable in the natural, you become unreachable in the spirit. What shook you before can no longer destabilize your faith. What stole your peace now finds no doorway into your thoughts. What triggered your wounds now finds no wound open to exploit. The enemy no longer has the foothold he once used, because the ground you are standing on is different. You are standing on victory that has already been declared. With this newfound stability comes the opening of paths that were once inaccessible. Suddenly, doors that were tightly shut begin to unlock. People who overlooked you begin to notice you. Resources that were previously unavailable begin to align themselves with your purpose. Opportunities that once seemed impossible begin to take shape. Not because you manipulated anything, not because you fought for visibility, not because you pushed your way into rooms, but because God has decided that the season has shifted. When heaven moves, the earth responds. What was hard will now feel orchestrated. What was delayed will now accelerate. What was withheld will now release. Not by force, but by divine timing. Not by striving, but by surrender. God, who watched you walk through the fire without losing your faith, has now positioned you for the harvest that follows endurance. And the harvest is not only material, it is spiritual strength, emotional clarity, relational alignment, and the supernatural capacity to step into the fullness of your calling. In this stage of your journey, you must also recognize that spiritual promotion carries responsibility. It calls you to walk with greater awareness, greater humility, and greater dependence on God. The shift is not simply for your benefit, it is for your assignment. God elevated you because your purpose requires it. Doors are opening because people you have not met yet will need what God has placed inside you. Favor is flowing because there is work only you can accomplish. This new dimension is not a reward. It is a commissioning, ascending. Heaven has authorized you to move forward, and the spiritual weight of that authorization is what you now feel inside your chest. And though you may still feel traces of the old season, though you may still be healing from the battles you fought, do not misinterpret this transition. You are not being pulled back. You are being lifted higher. The emotional residue you feel is not evidence of defeat. It is evidence of transformation. You are not who you were a year ago, a month ago, or even a week ago. Your spirit has grown sharper. Your heart has grown stronger. Your vision has grown clearer. You have matured past the trenches that once held you. So in this moment, understand the truth about your journey. The shift has already happened. Heaven has already moved on your behalf. The spiritual gate has already opened. You are not waiting for breakthrough. You are walking into it. You are not hoping for confirmation. You are living in it. And every step you take from this moment forward is backed by the authority of a realm that decided your promotion before the world ever saw it coming. Beloved chosen ones, now that heaven has declared the shift over your life, now that the unseen realm has opened what no human hand could have unlocked, there is a truth you must let settle deep into your spirit. God is proud of you. Not in a distant, abstract, theological way, but in a personal, intentional, intimate way. He has been watching you closely through every trial, every quiet night, every silent tear, every moment of resistance, discipline, and endurance. Nothing you carried was missed. Nothing you faced was unnoticed. Nothing you sacrificed was wasted. Heaven has been paying attention to you in ways you never realized, and today the Father himself says, I saw what you did when no one else did. I know what it cost you. I am proud. God saw every silent sacrifice. The sacrifices you made when nobody applauded, nobody affirmed, nobody understood. The sacrifices that emptied you, stretched you, and yet deepened you. He saw the way you kept showing up even when your strength was fading. He saw the decisions you made quietly, without recognition, without reward. He saw you choosing righteousness when compromise would have brought relief. He saw you fighting for purity in a world that calls impurity normal. He saw every act of obedience that cost you comfort. The world might have missed it, but heaven wrote it down. Nothing done in faith is ever forgotten in eternity. He saw the days you pushed forward while carrying pain inside your chest. The mornings where you woke up exhausted from yesterday's battles, yet still whispered, "Lord, lead me." The nights when tears soaked your pillow, but you refused to let bitterness take root. The moments where your body was tired, your mind overwhelmed, your heart heavy, yet you kept choosing to walk with integrity. These moments did not vanish into the air, they rose like incense before God. He saw you breaking but not breaking down. He saw the tremble in your spirit but also the fire that refused to die. He saw the weakness in your heart but also the endurance in your soul. And he called that beautiful. There were times people pushed you to retaliate. Times when disrespect invited you to respond with the same energy. Times when betrayal tempted you to harden your heart. Times when anger felt justified, but you did not give in. You chose integrity instead of revenge. You chose restraint instead of rage. You chose honor instead of hostility. You chose character instead of chaos. Heaven took note of every moment you silenced your flesh so your spirit could lead. That is not small. That is not insignificant. That is the kind of strength only God can cultivate. And because you chose integrity in places where your old self would have chosen retaliation, God says, I can trust you with more. He saw the battle between your fear and your faith, and he saw which one you chose to feed. Every time fear whispered you would fail, you spoke faith back into your soul. Every time anxiety surged, you reminded yourself of God's promises. Every time doubt tried to drown you, you lifted your eyes just enough to say, God, I still believe. Do not underestimate how powerful those small moments were. Faith is not built on perfect certainty. It is built on imperfect trust. And God watched you trust him when nothing around you made sense. That trust became the very evidence heaven used to qualify you for promotion. And then there were the days you kept going when everything inside you was collapsing. Days where life felt heavier than your capacity. Days where you questioned whether you had anything left to give. Days where you wanted to shut down, withdraw, disappear, yet something deep inside refused to let you quit. God saw every moment you chose perseverance over surrender. He saw you moving forward even while limping. He saw you praying even when the words came slowly. He saw you trying even when trying hurt. He saw your resilience and he honored it. The world celebrates success. Heaven celebrates endurance. Life tried to make you bitter, but you became better. Hardship tried to make you cold, but you grew warmer. Pain tried to shut your heart down, but you opened it wider. You did not become the cynical, hardened version of yourself that pain invited you to be. You allowed God to use the suffering to soften you, stretch you, purify you. Instead of becoming resentful, you became wise. Instead of becoming vengeful, you became compassionate. Instead of becoming harsh, you became discerning. Growth like that is rare, and heaven celebrates it. In a world drowning in moral compromise, you chose to keep your heart pure. You chose clarity over confusion, righteousness over indulgence, discipline over desire. You stayed true to your values even when nobody was watching, even when it cost you relationships, opportunities, and temporary comfort. Your purity became a shield, a testimony, a fragrance that heaven recognizes instantly. God sees purity not as perfection but as devotion. And he saw yours shining even when the environment around you pushed you to dim it. And then one of the hardest tests, forgiveness. You forgave people who never apologized. You released people who held no remorse. You blessed people who wounded you. You prayed for people who slandered you. You let go of offenses that would have poisoned your spirit. That forgiveness did not excuse what they did. It liberated you from the grip of their actions. Heaven saw the weight of that decision. Forgiveness is not weakness. It is spiritual authority. Only those deeply rooted in God can release what others try to hold against them. You forgave not because they deserved it, but because God deserved your obedience. And when God seemed silent, when your prayers echoed with no immediate answer, when heaven felt far and your spirit felt tired, you stayed faithful. You did not abandon your devotion. You did not disconnect from His presence. You did not walk away from the path He set before you. Silence did not scare you away. It trained you. Silence did not break you. It built you. Silence did not signal God's absence. It prepared you for His next revelation. Faithfulness in silence is one of the highest forms of worship, and God saw you honor Him even when you could not feel Him. Behind all of these moments, the sacrifice, the integrity, the faith, the resilience, the purity, the forgiveness, the loyalty, you were demonstrating something. Heaven values above anything else readiness. You prove that your character can carry what your calling requires. You prove that your heart is steady enough for responsibility. You prove that your spirit is mature enough for influence. You proved that your motives are pure enough for elevation. God promotes based on heart posture, not human applause. And your posture has positioned you for the season you are stepping into now. So understand this, the reward has begun, not the reward earned by works, but the reward birthed from faithfulness. The reward that comes to those who endured, quietly loved, deeply forgave, generously, and obeyed consistently. Heaven is not preparing to reward you. The reward is already unfolding. Seeds planted in tears are rising in joy. Doors that waited for the right moment are swinging open. Blessings that were held back are now released. This is not the conclusion of your struggle, it is the unveiling of your inheritance. But that the reward has begun to unfold, you must understand something essential about the nature of God's timing. He never releases a blessing into hands that are unprepared to hold it. He never places responsibility on shoulders that have not been strengthened to carry it. The season you just endured, the struggle you survived, the sacrifices you made were the very things that shaped you into the vessel capable of receiving what is now being poured out. The reward is not separate from the suffering. It is born from it. Every tear watered the ground you are about to harvest. Every setback tilled the soil of your character. Every disappointment cleared out what could not accompany your destiny. And because you remained faithful when others would have folded, heaven has moved you into a season where what once resisted you will now respond to you. What God is releasing is not a small blessing, not a subtle shift, not a gentle increase. It is the kind of reward that only comes to those who have endured a spiritual refining. It is not one door opening, but multiple doors aligning. It is not one opportunity, but a chain reaction of divine orchestration. You are stepping into a moment where everything you touched in faith is about to bear fruit. The years that felt empty are about to produce abundance. The seasons that felt barren are about to bloom. The parts of your life that seemed silent are about to sing. This is not exaggeration, it is spiritual law. Harvest always follows endurance. God watched you honor Him in private, and now He will honor you in places you were once overlooked. God watched you show compassion to people who wounded you, and now He will send people who treat you with the honor you deserved. God watched you close doors that were tempting but misaligned, and now He will open doors that were impossible without His hand. God watched you choose integrity when nobody was watching, and now He will elevate you in ways no human influence can block. Heaven does not forget. Heaven repays. You must understand that this reward is not simply material. It is spiritual elevation, emotional stability, mental clarity, relational alignment, inner strength, identity restored, peace revived, joy returned. It is the unfolding of everything God has been storing for you while He shaped you through each trial. Sometimes the greatest reward is who you become, not what you receive. And you have become someone capable of carrying destiny without breaking under the weight of it. But make no mistake, tangible blessings are also coming. God is not unjust. He saw the things you lost. He saw the places you were robbed. He saw the moments you were treated unfairly. And now he is restoring what was stolen, not in equal measure, but in multiplied measure. This is why the scripture says, he restores double to those who endured shame. You did not fight for revenge, you fought for righteousness. And because you did, God himself will repay what the enemy touched. The reward that is coming is not random, it is restoration. Heaven is proud of you because you could have turned bitter, but you chose healing. You could have chosen revenge, but you chose restraint. You could have abandoned your faith, but you chose trust. You could have walked away from God, but you walked closer. You could have let your pain define you, but you let it refine you. These choices carry spiritual weight, and heaven has responded. There is something powerful about a person who chooses goodness in the midst of darkness. God sees that kind of heart and says, I can build on this. I can entrust this person with influence. I can trust them with authority. I can trust them with responsibility. The promotion you are entering is not a reward for perfection. It is a reward for purity of heart, for humility, for obedience, for endurance. These qualities are currency in the kingdom, and you have invested them faithfully. As you step into this season, you will begin to notice the signs of God's reward unfolding in your path. Conversations will shift, opportunities will approach you unexpectedly. People will be drawn to the light inside you. Doors you assumed were closed forever will open effortlessly. What once required striving will now flow with ease. This is what happens when heaven endorses a person. The earth responds to what the spirit realm has spoken. Favor will begin to locate you without your effort. Resources will align themselves with your assignment. People who were once distant will suddenly show up to assist you. Influence will expand in ways you cannot predict. And through it all, your heart will know one thing with certainty. God is doing this, not your connections, not your strategy, not your performance. God. The same God who saw your tears, heard your prayers, carried your burdens, and strengthened your spirit in silence. This is his doing, and no one can take credit for it. You will also notice a shift within yourself. Your confidence will rise, not the kind built on ego or ambition, but the kind built on identity. You will walk not with arrogance, but with authority. Not with insecurity, but with assurance. You will sense that you are finally stepping into the version of yourself that has been waiting inside you for years. The version shaped through hardship, disciplined through scarcity, purified through fire. This version is ready. Ready for more. Ready for increase. Ready for responsibility. Ready for impact. And heaven takes great joy in releasing rewards to someone who has proven trustworthy. You might think God is distant or unemotional, but Scripture shows us repeatedly that God rejoices over his children. He delights in rewarding those who walk with integrity. He celebrates the victories of those who trusted him through trials. Heaven is moved by your endurance. God is proud of what you have become. You may wonder why the blessing is coming now, not earlier. But earlier you were not strengthened enough to carry it. Earlier your heart was still healing. Earlier your identity was still forming. Earlier your character was still being refined. God was not withholding the blessing. He was preparing you for it. The delay was protection. The waiting was maturity. The silence was instruction. And now that the foundation is built, the blessing can stand without crushing you. What comes next is not random favor. It is targeted reward. Reward for obedience. Reward for faith. Reward for unseen sacrifices. Reward for a heart that chose God even when life made it hard to believe. And as the reward unfolds, it will not just benefit you, it will flow through you. You will become a conduit of blessing. You will bless families, communities, and future generations because of the work God has done in you privately. Your testimony will carry weight. Your voice will carry authority. Your presence will carry peace. You will become the answered prayer for someone else. And as this reward expands, one truth will shine brighter than anything else. You are ready. Not because life got easier, but because you got stronger. Not because circumstances changed, but because you transformed. Heaven is proud because you have become someone who reflects the heart of God in the midst of a broken world. And now the reward is simply the manifestation of what heaven already saw inside you. Now that heaven has declared its approval over your life, now that the spiritual realm has shifted in your favor, and the Father himself has said, I am proud of you, something extraordinary begins to happen. Your atmosphere starts to change. The ground beneath your feet feels different. Even if nothing around you has visibly transformed, yet your spirit knows something monumental is unfolding. This is the moment when you step into what I call the supernatural open door season. Not a season of effort, not a season of forcing, not a season of striving, but a season where the doors of destiny open by divine authority. Doors you tried to push in the past will now swing open on their own. Opportunities you once chased will begin chasing you. Movements you once prayed for will begin aligning with perfect timing. This is the season Scripture calls the fullness of time, when preparation meets purpose and heaven meets earth. The first sign of this season is the emergence of destiny. Doors specifically crafted for your calling. These are not ordinary opportunities. These doors do not lead you into convenience, they lead you into alignment. They do not flatter your ego, they fulfill your assignment. They do not simply open a path, they open the right path. Destiny doors are the kind of doors that carry weight in the spirit. You feel them before you see them. You sense them before they manifest. Something in your soul tells you I am standing at the edge of something I cannot fully describe. These doors require no manipulation, no persuasion, no compromise. They open because heaven touches them. And when heaven touches a door, there is no human force that can keep it shut. As these destiny doors begin to move, something else unfolds in your life, timely opportunities. You will begin to notice that things that once felt delayed, difficult, or locked in place suddenly begin to shift at the perfect moment. Not too early where you are unprepared, not too late where you are discouraged, but precisely when your spirit is ready and your character is strong. This timing is not coincidence, it is orchestration. God aligns opportunities not around your desires, but around your readiness. Doors open not just because you want them to, but because you have become the person capable of walking through them. And in this season, you will experience divine timing at a level you have never encountered before. Moves you once hesitated to make will now feel natural. Transitions that once seemed frightening will now feel guided. Relocations, new positions, new callings, new environments will open in ways that carry unmistakable peace. And as these doors and opportunities unfold, God begins sending what Scripture calls divine helpers. These are individuals you did not seek out, people who appear in your life, seemingly out of nowhere, equipped with wisdom, connections, insight, and support that propel you into your next level. Divine helpers speak your name in rooms you have never entered. They advocate for you without expecting anything in return. They guide you with discernment that feels almost supernatural. They are not there to use you, drain you, or distract you. They are there because heaven assigned them to you. These helpers are evidence that your calling is bigger than your capacity. Destiny is never walked alone. God sends people to lift you, cover you, sharpen you, and accelerate you. And in this season, these helpers will begin to appear at times that confirm only God could have arranged it. With divine doors and divine helpers comes another dimension of breakthrough. Financial and career elevation. But understand this clearly, this is not random increase. This is strategic increase. The kind of financial breakthrough that elevates your influence, expands your reach, and frees you from limitations. The kind of professional breakthrough that places you in roles you once thought were beyond you. This breakthrough is not about greed, it is about purpose. God funds what He calls. And as your calling expands, so will your provision. You will experience opportunities that surpass your qualifications, promotions that bypass competition, resources that arrive before the need even appears. This is the evidence that God is not only shifting your spirit, but also your environment. And then one of the most sacred manifestations of this season appears relationships aligned with destiny. These are connections that sharpen you, strengthen you, and speak life into you. Relationships where you feel safe, understood, supported, and spiritually aligned. These are not draining relationships. They are elevating relationships. They do not pull you backward, they push you forward. They do not tolerate your calling, they celebrate it. These relationships are sent because destiny cannot be fulfilled in isolation. God sends covenant people, not convenience people. He sends partners in purpose, not partners in dysfunction. And one of the clearest signs you have entered the supernatural open door season is the arrival of relationships that carry the same spiritual frequency as your calling. What makes this season truly powerful is that the doors open without your striving. This does not mean without your effort, but without your force. You no longer have to knock until your knuckles bleed. You no longer have to beg for access. You no longer have to fight for visibility. In this season, God does the opening. God does the lifting. God does the positioning. You simply walk through what He has already unlocked. When you step into a grace-made door, it feels effortless. Not because it is easy, but because God is the one pushing it open. This season is also marked by something profound, the breaking of generational chains. What held your bloodline will no longer hold you. What crippled your ancestors stops at you. What repeated through generations, God will break through your obedience. You will notice that patterns that once felt unshakable collapse under the weight of your surrender. You will feel generational burdens lifting. You will see cycles of fear, poverty, dysfunction, illness, or emotional imprisonment ending with your life. You become the interruption to generational curses and the beginning of generational blessings. And finally, this season is marked by supernatural acceleration. Grace accelerates what effort never could. Doors open faster. Opportunities align quicker. Breakthroughs manifest sooner. What should have taken years will happen in months. What should have taken months will happen in weeks. God is not skipping steps, He is accelerating them. Not because you rushed, but because you are ready. You will begin to realize that heaven does not work on human timelines. When God says the season is now, time bows to His command. When acceleration begins, it catches you by surprise because it contradicts everything you walked through in the last season. You spent years feeling stuck, waiting, praying, wondering if movement would ever come. You endured delays that felt endless, setbacks that felt personal, and stretches of silence that felt unbearable. But acceleration is heaven's way of reminding you that God does not measure time the way you do. Where you count minutes, He measures maturity. Where you see delay, He sees development. And when He decides the time has come, He does in a moment what your effort could not accomplish in a decade. That is why in this season you will look around and realize everything is happening faster than you imagined. Not chaotically, but purposefully. Not recklessly, but precisely. This is not the rush of human ambition, this is the ease of divine orchestration. As acceleration unfolds, you will feel God pulling you into spaces you once stood outside of. It may start with a message, a conversation, an unexpected invitation, or a sudden shift inside your spirit that tells you it is time to go forward. These moments serve as spiritual signals that the wind of God is at your back. You will sense a momentum. You did not create a push. You did not initiate a strength. You did not manufacture. This is what Scripture means when it says, "Not by might nor by power, but by my Spirit." You will walk into places that once intimidated you and feel a new confidence. You will speak in moments that once silenced you and feel a new authority. You will take steps that once frightened you and feel a new courage. These changes are not self-improvement, they are spiritual empowerment. And as empowerment grows, the doors in front of you will not simply open, they will respond. Some doors will open quietly, gently, gracefully, as though they were waiting for your arrival. Others will burst open with force because the weight of heaven has been pressing on the other side, ready to release what was stored up for you. These doors will not ask for credentials you do not have. They will not demand qualifications you cannot meet. They will recognize the anointing on your life and open because the one who authored your story has declared your entrance. You are no longer waiting for opportunity. Opportunity is waiting for you. But with every open door comes the need for discernment. Not every door is a destiny door. Not every offer is aligned. Not every opportunity is God sent. And as the momentum increases, so must your ability to recognize what is for you and what is meant to distract you. You will feel it in your spirit. A lack of peace will expose the counterfeit. A sense of heaviness will reveal misalignment. God will whisper to you in ways that guide your steps with clarity. In this season, peace will be your compass. Not comfort, not convenience, but peace. And when you feel peace, you will know the door is yours to walk through. As you move forward, the presence of divine helpers will continue to be one of the greatest confirmations of this supernatural open door season. You will meet people who advocate for you without needing anything from you. People who pour into you without expecting repayment. People who push you toward purpose because they recognize something in you that resonates with heaven. These helpers are strategically placed by God to lift you where your strength cannot reach alone. They carry keys you do not possess, insight you have not yet discovered, and wisdom you need for the next level. And as they enter your life, you will realize that you are not simply being elevated, you are being established. Establishment is when God not only opens the door, but positions you securely inside it. It is when He anchors you into your calling in a way that cannot be shaken by criticism, fear, or doubt. In this stage, you will feel a grounding, a stability, a spiritual rootedness that tells you, this is where I belong. The insecurities of your old self will lose their power. The fear of inadequacy will fade. The hesitation that once paralyzed you will break. You will no longer see yourself as someone who is trying to rise. You will see yourself as someone who was destined to rise. And this internal shift is one of the greatest signs that God has positioned you in a place no enemy can remove you from. With this establishment comes something deeper, generational impact. The open door season is not merely about your personal breakthrough. It is about breaking through what held your family line for generations. You will begin to notice that patterns that once felt normal for your lineage no longer have any authority over you. Emotional cycles, financial difficulties, spiritual battles, relational dysfunctions, things that seem to run through your ancestry will now come to an end through your obedience. You will step into blessings that previous generations prayed for but never lived to see. You will carry victories that your ancestors longed for but could not reach. You become the hinge upon which the future of your family swings. Through you, old chains break and new legacies begin. And as generational chains fall, supernatural favor becomes the rhythm of your walk. Not random luck, not convenient timing, but divine favor. Favor that positions you ahead of schedule. Favor that lifts you beyond competition. Favor that protects you from sabotage. Favor that grants access you did not earn through human effort. This favor is part of the acceleration. It is what moves you beyond what your resume can justify or what your background could predict. In this season, you will see God move you ahead, not because you are better, but because you are aligned. Every step you take in this supernatural open door season is evidence of God's faithfulness. But it is also evidence of your faithfulness. You endured the waiting. You survived the pruning. You surrendered the old identity. You listened through the silence. You obeyed without understanding. And now the season you are stepping into is not only what God promised, but what you have been prepared for. You will walk into it with humility, with wisdom, with courage, and with the authority of someone who knows heaven has endorsed every step. You are in the season where destiny responds to your presence, where opportunities are drawn to your obedience, where doors open because heaven has spoken your name. This is the supernatural open door season. And everything in your life will begin to move accordingly. As we come to the end of today's message, my dear friend, you need to understand clearly that when God decides it is your time, He does not simply open a door. He adjusts your entire timeline. He realigns the rhythms of your life. He accelerates what once moved slowly. He shifts what once refused to budge. He breathes on the things that seem lifeless. And suddenly everything becomes possible in a way that feels almost unreal. You look around and realize the atmosphere has changed. The landscape has shifted. The momentum has increased. Heaven has placed your life under divine acceleration, and you are not stepping into blessing at a walking pace. You are being carried into purpose at supernatural speed. This acceleration is not random or unplanned. It is the culmination of everything you have endured. The waiting, the pruning, the training, the testing, the silence, everything was preparing the ground for this shift. And once heaven completes its preparation, God does not release blessings slowly. When He moves quickly. When He shifts completely. When He decides the season has changed, everything in your life begins responding to His voice at once. The slow becomes fast. The stagnant becomes fluid. The delayed becomes delivered. You begin to witness motion on all sides, and your spirit knows something divine is unfolding. This accelerated pace is not the consequence of your effort, it is the evidence of God's timing. You could not have created it. You could not have planned it. You could not have forced it. No amount of effort, talent, or ambition could have opened these doors or aligned these moments. The acceleration comes from the hand of God alone, because He is the only one who sees the full timeline of your destiny. He knows exactly where you are, exactly what you need, exactly what is still ahead of you, and exactly when your breakthrough must unfold. And when He speeds up your timeline, everything moves into place with precision you could never have orchestrated yourself. One of the first signs of this divine acceleration is that breakthroughs begin to appear without the struggle you once expected. Things that used to take exhausting effort now happen with ease. The tension you once felt while trying to make progress disappears. You stop striving and start receiving. You stop fighting for visibility and begin being sought out. You stop running after opportunity and watch opportunity run toward you. This is what it looks like when God takes over the pace of your life. Breakthroughs arrive not because you pushed harder, but because heaven decided it was time. These breakthroughs often appear in the form of blessings that you did not anticipate. Unexpected provision, unexpected favor, unexpected connections, unexpected shifts. Blessings that show up without warning yet carry the unmistakable fingerprint of God. Blessings that feel too strategic to be coincidence, too precise to be random. Blessings that arrive so suddenly and so effortlessly that you cannot take credit for them, even if you wanted to. They remind you that you are not living by chance. You are living by design, God's design. And as this acceleration increases, one of the most beautiful things you will notice is that everything that used to feel slow now begins to move quickly. Not chaotically, but divinely. Conversations turn into opportunities. Ideas turn into assignments. Seeds turn into harvest. What once took months now takes weeks. What once took weeks now takes days. What once took days happens in a moment. This is not circumstantial, it is spiritual. It is the manifestation of divine momentum, where God lifts you into a pace your natural life could never sustain on its own. In this season, doors will open so quickly that you may struggle to believe it. Opportunities will appear so suddenly that you may hesitate for a moment, wondering if they are real. But they are real. Heaven is simply moving at a pace your past does not recognize. You will experience a kind of acceleration that feels surreal, a speed that leaves you in awe of how fast God can work when the appointed time arrives. Some blessings will come so quickly that you will look around and say, "God, is this really happening?" And He will answer, "Yes. This is what happens when I carry you instead of you carrying yourself." As acceleration increases, opportunities will not simply become available. They will pursue you. Your name will come up in rooms you have never stepped into. People will recommend you without being asked. Doors will swing open without you knocking. Invitations will find you without you searching. This is the reversal of the old season, where you spent years knocking on doors that refused to open. In divine acceleration, the doors knock for you. Opportunities seek alignment with your calling. Favor recognizes your identity. You no longer have to chase what heaven has already assigned to you. This is the season where grace becomes your transportation, You are no longer moving by the strength of your own legs. You are being carried by the wind of God. It feels like standing in a river whose current pulls you forward whether you take a step or not. You feel a supernatural lift, a divine push, an undeniable momentum that comes from outside of you. This is what it means to be carried by grace. Grace does not erase effort, but grace multiplies it. Grace does not eliminate responsibility, but grace empowers it. Grace does not ignore your weakness, but grace covers it. And in this season, grace will take you further than striving ever could. Divine acceleration does not mean everything is easy. It means everything is possible. It means obstacles that once stood in your way now fall to the side. It means resistance that once slowed you down can no longer touch you. It means circumstances that once intimidated you now shift in your favor. It means the limitations that once defined you no longer have permission to influence your trajectory. In acceleration, you are no longer operating under earthly laws. You are operating under heaven's pace, heaven's timing, and heaven's authority. As God accelerates your life, He also accelerates your preparation. He gives wisdom quickly. He brings clarity quickly. He opens your understanding quickly. You begin to comprehend things that once confused you. You begin to discern things that once deceived you. You begin to see with sharper vision, hear with deeper sensitivity, and move with greater confidence. This preparation is not rushed, it is refined. God does not accelerate you without equipping you. Every moment of this season is divinely balanced so that the pace of your growth matches the pace of your destiny. And with this new pace comes a new responsibility to trust the movement. You may feel tempted to slow things down, to second guess the speed, to question how everything is unfolding so quickly. But acceleration is not meant to be analyzed, it is meant to be embraced. God is not rushing you, He is aligning you. You are not being pushed, you are being positioned. And the pace is not to overwhelm you, it is to transport you. You prayed for breakthrough, and now breakthrough has arrived at the speed of heaven, not the speed of earth. When divine acceleration is at work, you step into a chapter where you no longer feel behind. You no longer feel delayed. You no longer feel forgotten. You realize that God has placed you exactly where you need to be, exactly when you need to be there. All the years that felt wasted become redeemed. All the seasons that felt silent become significant. All the waiting becomes meaningful. In acceleration, God returns the time you thought you lost by propelling you into a future you could never have reached on your own. And when you look back, you will not say, "I worked for this." You will say, "God carried me into this." You will not say, "I made this happen." You will say, "His grace overtook me." You will not say, "I earned every step." You will say, "Heaven accelerated my feet." Because this chapter is not about human ability, it is about divine momentum. Finally, I want to thank you sincerely for staying with me until the final word. If something in this message lifted your spirit, brought you clarity, or reminded you of God's presence in your journey, I'm grateful we could share this moment together. Your support, whether through a quiet prayer, a kind word, or simply showing up, helps this space continue to shine light into places that need hope. If you feel led, take a moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel, or share it with someone who might need encouragement today. These small actions make a real difference and allow us to keep spreading God's truth and peace to more hearts around the world. And I would truly love to hear from you. Tell me in the comments which part of this message spoke to you the most. Your reflections help build a community grounded in faith and understanding. May the Lord cover you with His grace, strengthen you for every step ahead, and bless the work of your hands. Thank you again for being here today. May His peace follow you into every room you enter. Amen.